welcome, share a few things that are happening with CSA and some of the changes that we are seeing as an organization and some of the ways that you can take advantage of what's included with your membership for CSA. Excuse me. 1:20, we will have our sponsored presentation, who is Trend Micro today. Fernando Cardoso of Trend Micro will be giving just a brief overview here for 10 minutes. And then our keynote presenter of the day is Scott Carlson with Kodalski Security, and he will be talking about Devops, a security practitioner's point of view. And then we will open it up to Q&A at the end and get you guys all back on your day. So with that, we do have a couple of upcoming events. We always want to make sure you know what's coming in the next couple of months. So coming up here in September, we have Michael Rasmussen, who is, you may be familiar with, well known in the GRC community, and is going to be presenting on navigating chaos, managing risk in a cloud environment. He has quite a few speaking engagements and is very renowned on this topic, and he'll be focusing in more on being aware, aligned, responsive, agile, and resilient. So we hope you can join us for that session. In October, we are having the President Cloud Security Alliance, Jim Rivas, and he will be just talking about overall what can CSA offer for you. What are some things that you may not be taking advantage of as being a member of CSA? What are some of the trends that are going on in security today? And there's just, where is the industry going? So that'll be a good one to join if you are not super familiar with CSA and want to take advantage of your membership. November, we have an exciting threat hunting and incident management workshop coming up. More details to follow, but slate that date of November 19th in your calendar. And then in December, we are going to be doing a co-sponsored event with another security organization, and more details to follow on that as well. And then kind of a teaser into 2021. So we'll talk here in a minute about what that 2021 curriculum will look like. But we did want to plant the seed for January 28th, as we have a special celebrity speaker coming. If you have seen the Netflix documentary, The Great Hack, or if you're familiar with Brittany Kaiser, a very prevalent data rights activist, she will be our presenter in January. And that's something to look forward to. She does have her new book, Targeted, coming out here. And if you're familiar with her, again, we welcome you to join us here in January. So what's new with CSA? You know, the organization is in itself here in Minneapolis is a couple years old, and we're continuing to change and continuing to grow as the chapter grows. And so we're trying to just continue to add more resources for you as an organization and for our sponsors as well. So expanding our social media platforms, you know, we're looking to just continue to expand more, post more, be more of a resource for you and your organizations and what's happening in security and cloud in today's world. So be sure to check us out on Facebook and on Twitter, and obviously we're on LinkedIn as well, but we'll drop these links in the chat. Feel free to like us, follow our hashtags, and add your comments, add any collateral or articles that you might think be prevalent to the world today as well. On that note as well, we do have a new email address. This is just a reminder, info@csamn.org. So if you have any comments, questions, if you want to see something out of the chapter, if you have a recommendation for an article or a post or anything like that, we want to hear from you. We want to hear from our members, from our sponsors, everybody. So note that of info@CSAMN, and be sure to send any collateral or content our way. And on that note as well, from a content initiative, we know there's a lot of talent out here in the Minneapolis market, and we realize that you all probably take to certain news sources and certain ways to get your news every day. And we want to tap into that. We want to know what you're watching, what you're listening to, what you're reading, and be able to share that with the other members as well. So if you come across a favorite podcast, a favorite article, whatever it might be, send it on over. We want to share that back out. And this goes for sponsors too. For the sponsors that are on with us here today, it doesn't necessarily just have to be your company information. It's just something that's relevant to the industry. So be more thought leaders together, and ultimately, you know, kind of get us all rowing down the same path, so to speak. As far as what else is new, so for those of you that did complete our survey last month, thank you. We greatly appreciate your feedback, and we look forward to bringing in some of those ideas into 2021. And so what we are doing with that feedback is in September, we will be working on our curriculum for 2021 and ultimately building out that calendar year. If you did not get a chance to complete that survey, please go to csamn.com/survey and go ahead and complete it. We value all of your feedback and hope that if you did not do that, you can take 2 minutes here today and complete that for us. And then also coming in 2021, again, kind of going back to providing more value to you as members, we want to do a couple of things. One, we're going to be creating different study groups for obtaining certifications. For example, the Certificate of Cloud Security Knowledge. Again, going back to what's relevant for you in the industry and being able to help you accomplish those milestones that you're trying to accomplish. And then creating of our own monthly content as well. So we'll continue to provide more resources for you all, and yeah, just expand that. We mentioned this last time, but join us on Circle. Circle is a peer-to-peer social platform that is put forth by Cloud Security Alliance Global, and there's a specific Minnesota chapter that we encourage you to join. So you can not only see who's a part of your local chapter here, but also you can join the entire global community. And so we encourage you to go to this URL, circle.cloudsecurityalliance.org, click on the sign-in button, and then you can go into communities, chapters, and look for Minnesota and join our community. What's really awesome about this platform, from my own personal experience, is that if you have a question, if you are interested in a topic or have a question or a legal question about cloud, whatever it might be, there's resources out there that people aren't taking advantage of. And this platform is growing very quickly. And so being able to hop in and just ask your question or look at the feeds that are already out there, maybe somebody else had your question. It's a great, great resource. And we're trying to encourage everybody to get on and join our groups. We have a couple new partnerships that we're excited about. We have a partnership with RSA, and coming up, you heard coming up in November and more into 2021, we're going to be doing a threat hunting workshop, multiple threat hunting workshops with RSA. I'm not going to go through this in detail here, but you can see kind of what that workshop entails, why it's important to you, some of the things that you will get from this workshop. And for you, it doesn't cost anything. This is free to CSA members. And so we encourage you to sign up to check it out and just follow along with this partnership. We're really excited for where we're going to take this with RSA into the future, and for this first workshop here coming up in a couple of months.
I apologize, Sarah. Are you advancing the slides or moving the slides forward?
I have been, yeah.
So if you go into the top, just right as center, you can advance them yourself if they're not advancing for you.
Are you guys getting them now?
No, but I figured it out. If you go to the top, there's a couple here. It says 8 of 12. You can go 1 of 12, 2 of 12 up in the upper toward the top, just right of center.
Yeah, that's what I've been advancing.
It hasn't been advancing for me, but I've been doing it manually. So
I am so sorry, guys.
Well, either you can do it yourself or you can let the presenter do it. So once you click on the right and left arrow, there's a small box that says to presenter. So if you click on the to presenter button, you get to see what Sarah is presenting.
Yep, that worked.
Sorry about that, guys. Give me just a second. Now it looks like it's loading on my side. All right. Are we advancing now?
perfect.
Okay. Yep. So I'm gonna take a step back and pause just so you can see the content that was up here, and then we can share this detail in the notes as well. So some of the speakers that we talked about. And we will drop these links in the chat as well. So the social media links, email address. And then the circle link here. All right, back on track. Sorry about that, guys. So ending with the threat hunting RSA workshop, again, encourage you to sign up, encourage you to check this out. It's going to be really, really awesome, and a way for you to get some credits as well. Cybersecurity Summit coming up here in October. CSA is partnered with this organization, and we look forward to both the keynote speaker of Tom Patterson, as well as just the entire event, and ultimately how we can advance in the cybersecurity community. Just a couple of reminders for our event here today. As I mentioned up front, we are recording these events, and this will be available via our Circle platform. It seems to be okay right now, but if there is any background noise, we will mute everyone. And then if we're speaking, we'll ask you to unmute yourself. And if you have questions, same thing. If you do have a question, feel free to drop it in the chat. We will be monitoring that and asking the presenters accordingly. And then last, if you do have any feedback or questions throughout the presentation, or you want to circle back with us at the end, feel free to email info@csamn.org. And last, but certainly not least, thank you to our virtual host, Jason Peterson with Microsoft. Thank you to our keynote presenter, Scott Carlson with Kodalski, and then also our meeting sponsor of Trend Micro. We couldn't have this chapter without our sponsors, and we greatly appreciate Fernando and Trend speaking with us here today. So with that, I will pass it over to Fernando Cardozo with Trend Micro Solutions Architect.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for being invited for this chapter. I will be very glad to be presenting the team here. Let me try to share my screen with everyone. One sec. Can you see my screen now?
We can, yep.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, very nice to meet you, everyone. I'm Fernando Cardozo, one of the solutions architect for our Cloud One platform across the North America. And today I would like to talk a little bit about how to secure infrastructure as a code pipelines, right? We see, for example, in the market, there is 3 major cloud builders, right? The first one is what we call cloud migration. So many companies start migrating their regular physical servers, virtual machines, or monolithic applications to the cloud environment, right? Just like a lift and shift. They are now planning to adapt to those applications, just migrating from the regular data center to the cloud, right? The second one is what we call cloud native applications. And they start using more containers, serverless. They start creating more microservice, just moving from the monolithic application to microservice, and also starting using cloud storage, right? And the last piece is what we call cloud governance and operation excellence. And this is more associated, it's how you make sure the compliance and standards that your company or your organizations are following up, right? Which one you need to be compliant for those environments that you're migrating to the cloud, right? And some companies, this is the last stage, right, during this journey to the cloud, or some companies right now that they start seeing this is the first stage, right? They want to make sure and create the guardrails for every single workload that they are planning to migrate, or they have already in the cloud environments, right? And when we talk about cloud operational excellence, it's important to remember a little bit about the pipelines, right? You have the developers or SREs or cloud architects that they are creating those infrastructure as a code, and they send those new files of IAC, right, to the repository of codes, and they will be building some kind of automation with a CI/CD technology like Jenkins, GitLab, Circle CI, and some others, right? After they do those verifications or those automations, they will start creating those environments in the cloud providers like AWS, Azure, GCP, Alibaba Cloud, and some others, right? But some people, they forget about the problems around the operational challenge right here. First one, the rapidly growth of new service, right? If you compare the number of servers from AWS or from Azure 5 years ago and right now, it is crazy the number of new features and granular details in the configurations that you can do it, right? It's also hard for your internal team to understand and know every single configurations for every single server in those cloud providers. Many teams inside the business units are starting using more and more cloud. It is hard to have the visibility across those environments. And also it's hard to keep the compliance for every single cloud application that you are creating today, right? One of the ways that you can start in looking, but companies sometimes forget to check, it is the misconfigurations in the cloud before they create those environments in the runtime, right, in the cloud providers. The second way could be some problems around the cross-account access to repositories, or the repositories could be S3 buckets, could be a ECR in the cloud as a container registries, could be specifically EC2s that we have access, right, that could be open to the internet and a couple other aspects. Open storage to the internet. This happens a couple times with couple companies, right, where they have the S3 buckets open to the internet, and some hackers took over the confidential information from them. The keys and secrets being rotated, right? There is a couple compliances around, like every 30 days or every 60 days, you need to rotate those keys. Some companies, they forget to do those kind of things, and it's important to remember those key rotations, because if somebody got access to your keys, it'd be easy for them to have access to the information, right? It's keep the eyes open on those kind of things, right? When we talk about infrastructure as a code, it's important to remember, like 10 years ago, right? For you to create like a server, it would take you like probably a month or 2 months to buy the servers, put in the rack, install the operation system, or sometimes install the ESXi, right, as a virtualization technology, put the license, put the applications, and all those kind of things. But right now, with like infrastructure as a code, it's pretty simple. You define everything in one line of one file of code, right? Could be like a CloudFormation, could be Terraform, could be Pulumi, could be like so many infrastructure as a code that we have in the market today, right? And why so many companies are starting using infrastructure as a code, right? The first point, and it's very important, it is the speed, right? This can accelerate so many companies to create those environments pretty fast. The control, because you are saving all this IAC files in a code repository, you have the versioning process and the control what it's being changed, right? And also the consistency, right? For example, if I want to create the same exactly environment that I created yesterday, today, I can use the infrastructure as a code that I created yesterday and replicate those environments without any change, right? Before, the human process and the human error that we have could create like some problems around misconfigurations and all those kind of things. But there's a little bit challenge. For example, when you start to use infrastructure as a code and you start migrating so many workloads pretty fast to the cloud, right? There is the challenge about like regulated workloads. You have like a PCI environment in your data center and you want to migrate that to the cloud. Like how I can make sure all those workloads will be like following up the compliance from like PCI DSS, HIPAA, or NIST, right? Large environments visibility. I have a couple customers that I've been helping that they have like over 1,000 AWS and Azure accounts. And it's pretty challenging for them to have a visibility across all this multi-cloud in one single pane of glass, right? Best practice drift, like every single cloud provider today, they offer like AWS well-architected framework, Azure well-architected framework, or Google or GCP well-architected framework, right? That you can follow the best practice from the cloud providers for you to have the best of the environments that they offer. Continuous compliance, it's a very important, related to the first one, right? But how you can make sure every single day or every hour, if somebody change or update new codes, right, in your environment, if they are not changing or they are like putting your environment open to the internet. For example, imagine you have a S3 buckets that's being private and somebody by mistake in one configuration put that in public, how you can make sure you are compliant with the standards that you need to follow up, right? Please, if you have any specific question during my presentation, if you want to send the message to the chat, or if you want to open your mic and ask myself, it would be fantastic, right? I just want to make like a little bit better communication here, and I can answer on the fly the questions. The top 5 misconfigurations, when we talk about that, it is coming from the DAC reading last year, right? Storage access, secrets management, a lot of systems or service in the cloud, they have like logging and monitoring not enabled, right? For you to have some tracking in the cloud, overly permissive access to the hosts, containers, and virtual machines, plus other service that the cloud providers offer. And also lack of validation, right? And when we put this like lack of validation, I just brought one specific statement from Gartner that it's pretty important. Through 2023, at least 99% of the cloud security failures will be the customer fault. What that means is basically customer needs to validate every single workload that they are migrating to the cloud. There is this kind of like a share security responsibility in the cloud. That's very important for the customers to remember that, right? The cloud provider can give you the best security for their infrastructure, but there are so many services and so many configurations that you need to take care also in the cloud providers, right? The other important point in this statement from Gartner is like through 2024, organizations will be implementing a CSPM technology. CSPM is like Cloud Security Posture Management, right? To help them to reduce those cloud security problems around misconfigurations, right? And when we talk about like CSPM, usually a lot of companies only check the conformity or the problems in the cloud providers in the runtime when they create those environments, right? But it's important to remember that you can, and there is so many other technologies in the market that can also help you to check those cloud formation templates or to check in the CI/CD pipeline those infrastructure as a code before you submit it to the production environment or stage environment, right? And this is what we call shift left, right? Moving the same checks that you have in the runtime to the early stage for the development team to help them with better visibility. Trend Micro has one specific technology that we call Cloud One Conformity that can brings you this kind of like visibility, right? And this technology specifically, we have like over 600 conformity checks out of the box that you can easily follow up with like actions, steps by steps that we provide in our knowledge base, right? For every single group that we have. We do like daily best practice checks, over 500 million. We are probably close of like 600 million checks right now globally. We have the runtime security monitoring that we can help customers to have like a real-time visibility about like any specific change in the AWS environments today. And also we support 12 global compliance templates like HIPAA, PCI DSS, NIST 853, NIST cybersecurity, CIS, AWS Well Architect, and some others. Any questions until this moment? No, I don't see any questions in the chat. And here is a little bit of like a overall picture of like how you could implement infrastructure as a code in the pipeline, right? The first step here in the left is like creating like IDE plugin that you can install in the VS Code and help you to have some kind of visibility inside the IDE. The second step would be like a template scanner that you can use the APIs to validate every single cloud formation template before you creating the AWS environments. And the last piece here is like the runtime visibility, multi-cloud visibility, compliance in real time that also can be integrated with like a ServiceNow, Jira, PagerDuty, Slack, Microsoft Teams for you to receive notifications, but plus to open support tickets with your security team, SOC team, cloud architect team, and have a better workflow of communications between the cloud team and the development and SREs too. If we go a little bit further, there is this, here is like a little bit of how the security plugin works, right? You have the VS Code with like some kind of cloud formation template, and you can easily request a scan on the fly, and they will provide you like this kind of like summary of like risks and the details about the detections. On the right side here in their message, there is this blue message that's like a link, right? That goes to our knowledge base where you can see the details about those problems. If you want to test the VS Code, it's just like a QR code with your phone here, and you'll be able to download and install in your VS Code and start using with CloudFormation templates. Okay. I think that's it. Just want to add one specific thing here. I just recently wrote this article, putting security into the infrastructure as a code pipeline. If you want somebody want to read, this is like a follow-up article from this presentation that I just did. Plus, if you want to talk or discuss how to protect the DevOps pipelines, let me know. This is my email, my Twitter, and LinkedIn. Let's keep in touch, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Fernando. And we do have a couple questions in the chat here. First question is, how difficult is it for a company to create this kind of validation of misconfiguration using native tools from cloud providers?
Would be quite a bit complicated, right? Because imagine we have out of the box, we have 600 rules. For a company to use native technologies from cloud providers would be pretty hard because they need to build those rules by themselves using maybe AWS config, and they will probably have a lot of developers and SREs to create those kind of like automations. We provide a pretty simple technology that they can, in less than 10 minutes, create one account in conformity and starting scan their AWS or Azure accounts in like 5 minutes that you have like reports around CIS benchmark or NIST or PCI DSS and all those kind of things.
Okay.
Any other question?
Second question was, why is it becoming more common for misconfigurations in these cloud environments?
I think the point of Gartner mentioned, right? The increase of like customers using cloud providers, but also the service around the cloud providers and so many granular configurations makes it very complex for companies to follow up every single details around the compliance and standards that the market enforce those companies, right?
And then one last question here from Tim Korger. Can you expand on the shared security responsibility with the cloud providers and the customer? Has there been a publicized incident that brought this to the forefront of the industry, or maybe in the T's and C's of the EULA within the cloud vendor?
No, this is a very clear information from cloud providers. They usually present in the first meetings with any customer the shared responsibility module, right? I don't have the model here where we provide information, say like, oh, if you have an infrastructure as a code, this is the informations from the cloud providers. If you have software as a service, right, this is the information that they should be providing to you around like where they support and where you should be adding more security to those services, right? I have some articles in my Medium that I describe a little bit better those informations. For example, oh, if you have a Lambda function, what is the configurations that you should be taking care to protect those Lambda functions? Or if you have like S3 buckets, where you should be looking for protecting those S3 buckets against like the attacks from hackers, right? That's it, I think. I hope answer the question, Tim. But thank you very much. It was my pleasure to present to the chapter, and I hope you guys have a great one.
Yes, and thank you very much, Fernando. Thank you, Trend, for your sponsorship for our chapter as well. And changing gears here over to our keynote presenter. Keynote presenter is Scott Carlson with Kodalski Security. Scott is the Director of Innovation and Head of Blockchain Security Practice with Kodalski. Scott?
Hello. Hopefully everybody can hear me, see me, and see the presentation. Looks like it's good for me.
Yes. I think we're good.
Excellent. So what we're going to talk about today is in some way experiential. I've been doing this for a very long time, and what I like to do when I have conversations with folks like yourself, which, you know, I essentially assume you are qualified security professionals. You're at CSA for a reason. You know what a cloud is. You've been doing security a while. You generally, don't participate in these sort of events without sort of knowing the foundation. So what I want to do is just have a conversation with you, talking about, the how this matters, a little bit of DevOps, a little bit of SecDevOps, and maybe talk about some of the hurdles that you're going to experience when you do this for real in your company. Maybe I'll even cover some of the pain points you've experienced if you have run across this before. A tiny little bio about myself. So my primary claim to fame is I was global security architects at both Charles Schwab, large financial brokerage here in the US, as well as PayPal. I currently am running the blockchain team, as well as doing a bunch of innovation here at Kadelsky, which essentially means I'm the now what guy. If it falls outside of a normal swim lane of traditional cyber or services or something, they come to me and my team and say, what do we do now? And so I've been doing a lot of very weird sort of edge case global scale projects over the 20 years. And hopefully you'll appreciate my perspective on this. So first, let's maybe cement this sort of conversation around DevOps. I suspect a lot of you out there have heard the term, you might be familiar with the term, you might be a developer or an operator. And, just like cloud, somebody says, what's a cloud? And you either answer Salesforce or Amazon. A lot of the time people say, so what is DevOps? I guess the traditional answer would be, we're bringing development and operations closer together. Okay, so what does that mean? The interesting thing about the world where we are here in 2020, especially now that we're in a remote world, is that we're getting sort of to the point where the world is becoming self-service. The world is becoming more, as code, as a swim lane, as a pipeline, as enabled, as coded, as scripted, all these things. You hear the term shift left. And what we really mean is there are some people who start at the very beginning thinking about how to deploy something into production. And what we have done in the past is we have tried to use security gates and go live gates and operational gates to control what gets released to our customers. In the past, let's maybe say 5 to 7 years ago, it was okay to take our time getting things to production. It was okay to measure twice, measure 5 times, measure 20 times, go fix things, and then release it and then take our times. But what we're seeing today, especially from a security perspective, is things happen really fast. Clouds come and go. People want to deploy things at the end of the weekend. People want to release many times a day. The attackers are compromising systems in minutes. We know that as security people, we cannot respond in 0 minutes. And it is in our best interest ultimately, and I'll talk a little more about this in a bit, to start to put some of these foundational elements in upfront, because we just can't play defense anymore. There's no hope we have to play appropriate defense against nation state attackers that are better than us, scripters that are better scripters than us, attack tools that are better than our defense tools, right? So we need to care as security people, as infrastructure people, as cloud people. We need to start working together to build that foundational layer. People have heard about security by design. I'll talk about that in a little bit. We need these foundational things to be there at the very beginning instead of at the end. And to me, what DevOps means is bringing the different people together who understand how this needs to work together at the beginning and along the way to build a way to continually assert that this environment is still safe and stable and tested and ready to go. So we care because we have to not lose. I consider myself, like if I lose to a script kiddie, bad on me. I'd much rather lose to a nation state attacker than something simple that I could have caught along the process here. So, but what is DevOps? Under the covers, DevOps is pretty much automation with more automation and automation. You essentially are trying to get computers to do the work that humans used to do manually. Back in the day, you used to run a vulnerability scan when you were done. Back in the day, you used to run a scanner when you were done. Back in the day, you would check the automation thing when you were done. But now along the way, we have inserted a whole bunch of tooling, right? We just heard about one of Trend's versions of said tooling, where we try to do this stuff along the way. Continuously is the word people like to use. I sort of consider it as, what's the most appropriate time to do these things, right? When do I integrate the tool sets together? When do I start delivering code into the environment it belongs? When do I deploy, and how do I deploy safely in various places it needs to get? And then how do I operate an environment where you do these things continuously? If you consider, the go live process of old, where you would do a bunch of waterfall based development in development, and then your QA people would do the QA things. Then you would put in an A/B test or pre-prod environment to do some testing on it, and a bunch of people would bang on it, a bunch of tools would run against it. Most of the time there would be a pause there for 7 to 30 days while everybody tested the stuff. What we ran into in that world was we had to know everything worked at the very end. We've sort of learned over the last 3, 4, 5, 10 years now that cloud has been around, that it is much better, and I excuse this, it's much better to fail fast. It's much better to do continuous iteration. It's much better to use 2 pizza teams. It's much better to do modular releases. It really has proven its value. And now that we have these cloud tools, which are, reusable components that we want to plug together, I guess we want to know, how quickly does it integrate? How can I securely do this? How quickly can I deploy? And how do I know if it's working or not? When I say the word DevOps, again, I go back to, can I continuously do this? Can I continuously assert that it works? Can I continually test the baseline functions? And then do I know how to operate? The world of operation is sometimes not about fixing anymore, but it's about redeploying. And these kind of things you have to get muscle memory on as you develop your organization, as you develop your company, as you develop your new sort of situation, or as you mature your process. So what's sort of fun about this, and it's unfortunate that we can't be in person, because a topic like this gets emotional for a lot of people. You run across people who only do things because of the regulation, right? This regulation does not say automate it. Why do I need to do that? Humans catch things better than robots, right? Why should I do that? Why should I automate myself out of a job? You can read all these things, and I hope you chuckle to yourself that you have heard this from your coworkers. I would never use a cloud because then I don't know what Amazon is going to do to my stuff. Really? Amazon's got better things to do than go mess with your stuff, quite honestly. This comment I have here about breaking the build, I'll talk more about it in a little bit, I think. But at PayPal, one of the things that we worked on for a couple of years was continuous maturity. We thought to ourselves, how do we start to make this process better? Okay, we'll slowly start to introduce process. And then we slowly start to build friendships in the development team. And then we slowly start to enforce standards. And once we were comfortable that most of the people knew the standards, we got to the point where we were like, look, if you don't do the standards, we're going to break your deploy. We all agree that you need to do these minimized things. How about we break your build? We're going to break your build if you don't do the basics. And we got the management behind us, and we were able to do like this sin, right? We broke the deployment. We got to the point where we said, this security standard is far more important than going to market broken. And as you sort of consider your concerns, as you sort of think about, the sort of provocative side, the go live side, the things people will say, edge case arguments and stuff. I think as a proponent of DevSecOps, as SecDevOps, as DevOps, you need to be able to talk about their concern, but not let it be an edge case. What you definitely don't want to do is be like this, right? Your methodology around managing this, around doing DevOps, around using your cloud, you can't be like you're waiting for a train wreck. I know far too many security people who have done this whole like, I'll just stand back and watch them fail and they will see, right? I will tell them no after they screw this up. Okay, maybe that was 1980s, guys. Maybe, you could go to the BOFH, as some people have known this. Maybe you could stop these big deploys. That world is gone, right? We know, and we talked about it like in the last 30 seconds of the last talk. It is so easy to get cloud now. You swipe a credit card and anybody can start deploying anything. You definitely do not want to be the person they go around because they don't like you. You need to be in this world where you figure out how to build trust. And this is one of the things, I'm going to focus on security here because this is the Cloud Security Alliance. What do security people get from this? Trust to me is one of the top things that we get out of this. I have been the no guy. I was at, in front of this go live process saying, no, you do not get to go forward into production because you didn't finish your vulnerability scan. You let your Sub 1 go in. I don't care who you escalate to. My VP is, stronger than your VP, so we're going to stop this. All those games, right? Some of you are probably from very big companies, and you know that you can get in this. The operations guy in go live is going to stop the business from going because they've missed a vulnerability scan. How about we forget that that's a thing anymore, and we start to build trust within our developer community? We want, really, which is what we want on the covers, we want things to be secure. We want things to be the same every time. We don't want it to get messed up. And I want to be able to do continuous measurement that it's getting better. That seems reasonable, right? I know that the bad guys are getting better at this. So I also know that I need to do it fast. I want it fixed fast. I don't want to live in this, hey, every 6 months, let's scan it and then patch and reboot. Sometimes I have overnight, Windows releases their fix packs, Linux releases stuff. There's 0 days all the time. It would be really nice if I could deploy at the speed of 0 day. It would be very cool if I had this stuff instrumented in the process so I could just click a button and redeploy at the speed of infrastructure as code, at the speed of redeploy. Load balancers are created with active-active for a reason. Code is created to be deployed across data centers. There's multiple regions Amazon, simply so you can do these kind of things with speed. As we sort of work down this, what do you get? The truth, telling the truth is a really interesting, maybe ethical argument versus just behavior that we've learned. A lot of us got stuck in the world of plausible deniability. If I don't tell my boss that there's a Sub 1 here and then we get hacked, at least they won't get fired because they didn't know. Oh, okay, everybody's been hacked now. How about we just tell the truth and fix it rather than, generating a report every couple of months. As security people, when we have enforced operational tools that tell us the truth using actual data from the pipeline or from the cloud or from the code or from anything, we can actually see the current actual state. It's really funny as your methodology changes inside your company, as you go from a continuous assertion with operational tooling, it's probably foreign to some. If we have continuous assertion versus, a monthly audit or a yearly audit, looking back in the past and seeing how it was is a much different mindset than looking at the results of logs or tooling and telling how it is. If you know how it is, you know that it is secure and enforced. You know that the automated controls are in place. You know that it is still encrypting. It's interesting to know that it was 6 months ago or it was during the point of time that the audit happened. It certainly is a lot more useful to know that the automated controls are in there today. One of the things that I have arguments about on this last bullet here around tracking is I often have arguments with people around things like change tickets. If you have a methodology, ISO or ITIL or COBIT, I don't know, pick a thing. Somewhere in there, there's a change management book of knowledge or something like that, which says, hey, you need a change ticket that is looked at or approved by multiple parties. What it doesn't say in any of these documents is that it has to be a manual process that takes a long time. What it says is it needs gates, it needs approval process. So when you start looking at tracking and logging and tickets, there's no reason you can't sit down with a change team and define a process that's an approved process. There's no reason you can't have an automated logging and ticketing system which tracks what it's doing. And then there's no reason you can't have like an operations team click go when it's ready to release. Because of course, you can't always release at 5 o'clock. Sometimes you need to release at midnight. Sometimes you can time that. Sometimes you want a human to hit go. But that's all they do is hit go. And when they hit go, it updates the change ticket. It creates a ServiceNow thing. It schedules a bunch of other side works. There's no reason that this stuff can't be automated as long as it's telling you the state. That absolutely meets every change management requirement, absolutely meets every tracking requirement. you don't need that to be manual. I had a question come in about where this doesn't make sense. I think I have an appropriate call in for that. I'll talk about that in a minute. What I think is appropriate with any of this, and we'll talk about appropriate and then not appropriate. It's not okay to make up a process every single time. It is very inefficient. It is better to do this consistently so you can do it right, you can get good at it, you can do enforcement of it, especially in your critical production environments. You want to do this consistently and repeatable. You know, as crazy as it is, you know, humans make mistakes. We can all acknowledge that. You can never underestimate how badly humans can make it up. Maybe they can't overestimate how much we can mess it up, because we will mess it up. Whoops, I fell asleep. I didn't do the change ticket. Oops, I forgot to close it and I kept doing it. All these things. There, of course, are a lot of reasons to the question where DevOps doesn't make sense. To me, the conceptual idea of a repeatable process where you automate where you can makes sense all the time. I don't know of a situation where it doesn't make sense to build a repeatable process. I do believe there are situations where you don't want to do automated deployments, automated checking, automated releases. There are some environments, especially around human care, firmware updates, mission critical grids, that the technology currently does not lend itself to full automation. It certainly allows itself to be tested up front, but there's a really bad example that people use, and this is about airplanes, right? There's no way to pen test an airplane while it's flying, which then causes it to crash. So it would be inappropriate to do an automated full failure test on it, because obviously the ramifications. But there are ways to do synthetic testing on that. There are ways to do digital twins nowadays. There are ways to do things where the methodology fits, the security processes around design and pre-live testing happens, but then the manual process kicks in because the ramifications of doing the test are so important. Situations like that, I think you have to use common sense to figure out which parts are automated and which parts are philosophical. It always makes me giggle when everybody says, yeah, this is great, Scott, but my company is unique. I have customized all the stuff. There is no way, you know, we can't use the cloud. We have our custom thing. We've customized Remedy. We've built our own thing, and we can't do this. I completely disagree, especially because, you know, when we look at the CSA guidance that's out there now, right? I think 19 last year sometime, they released this DevSecOps automation pillar thing. If you read these words here, and I'll let you do that, there's no like how here. There is a what here. Everybody has collective responsibility. Everybody has pragmatic implementation, right? You got to collaborate with your teammates. Even if you customize everything till you're blue in the face, there still should be a methodology around common building blocks with custom criteria, because when you get to the end, customizing a workflow about use is not about how secure your encryption is or how secure your deployment is or getting rid of the 0-day bugs. That's almost always about user experience or some workflow or maybe a couple of tickets at the end. You can sort of see this process, you know, everybody take responsibility, work together, be pragmatic, build a compliance thing, automate it, and then measure what you did. That kind of sounds like every single standard out there known to man, whether you do something unique or not. And so when you think about DevOps, okay, yes, I can do this kind of methodology. If you're using automation, infrastructure, code, clouds, then you can bring the tooling and stuff into it to make it easier for you. So let me just sort of give a little bit of advice on what I think a program would look like for SecDevOps, and then I'll get into a little bit about the language and stuff. I have had the opportunity to build a couple of these programs from scratch to convert some waterfall go live processes into sort of full Scrum based, fully automated infrastructure as code worlds, you know, in clouds. One of the first things you need to do, or almost the first two things, is you need to figure out what the advice is and figure out how to review what you already have. Sometimes you need to bring in a third party, like we have a practice that does this, but you need to sort of prepare the security team, the development team, with what you're about to get into. These couple of areas are maybe the most important, where you all have to agree that it's for the good of the company that you get better at working together. This can't be about, I hate the developer, I don't want to talk to him anymore. It can't be, I'm the go live crazy person to get in the way. It's about, what do we need our framework to be? Like, what is our actual risk tolerance at this company? Are we a nuclear bomb site where, holy cow, we better have a good process? Or do you do a user blog and it's okay if you need to release in a few minutes? There's a huge difference between things that are text only and things that transact money. There's a huge difference between things that hold your medical data and things that generate reports of your Facebook activity. I mean, some things have a definite difference. And understanding this level of risk tolerance, level of regulation that you have to comply to, level of enforcement of how it's there, and also your budget and capabilities. There's really no way you can do this on zero budget. You need, at least to use the cloud tools. If you can spend a little more, you ask for some vendor help. If you spend a little more, then you get some consultants. If you can spend a little more, you hire more people, right? Your sort of money builds your maturity. Yeah, you can do this all yourself, but I really wouldn't do it all myself anymore, simply because it'll take too long. It'll take a couple of years to get where you can spend a little bit of money for. When you get ready, when you sort of have this language right, sort of back over here in the advise, and I can't believe I took it out. I'm a believer in enabling the business by telling them what I need. And that's the advice or the advise part, because I need to work with them to define how it gets done. I'm a security person. I need it to be free from vulnerabilities. I need to be able to monitor it. I need an API that I can query. I need to be able to quickly patch it. I need to know that it's not leaking secrets. I am not a development expert. I can't say, the only way to do this is to use X, HashiCorp. Use HashiCorp because I know that's the best. And those people say, that doesn't work with my code. Could I do this instead? You have to get into this sort of continuous process of, I have a framework. My security framework says you have to do these 10 things. Hey, developer person, help me find how we do these 10 things. Then help me build a framework for how to verify that you're actually doing the 10 things I want. And you know what? How about you take accountability for actually doing that? There's a part of the world where we can shift from the security people being responsible versus accountable. And what's cool about DevOps, SecDevOps, whatever you want to call it, is the development community starts to take accountability for delivering the control, and the security person starts to take responsibility for monitoring the results of that control, and then sort of alerting as quickly as possible that the control has a deficiency. That's a really cool shift. If you used to own the firewall and that was the control, it is on you to make sure it always works. But if you start to embed that stuff in some of the code and define that into the program, it's just there the whole time. You can start to test this with tabletop exercises. You can work through the what ifs. You can start to develop the things that are interesting versus the things that are non-negotiable. When I was at PayPal, one of the things that we were very strict on is you don't invent your own cryptography. You use the secrets management system. You use the default code repository. People don't leak code out. There was like 10 things. You always use the libraries that we have certified. You don't go pick random third-party libraries and get them from an outside source. You have to maintain them in our own. Like all these things around code supply chain, which clouds you use, which accounts you deploy into, became non-negotiable foundational things over time as we sort of built this common language. And it worked out really well because most developers don't really care about certain things. Yep, you got to manage passwords. They're totally okay using one if it works. And that's what's really important is we've seen over the last couple of years that most of the security tools that are in the DevOps world are the ones that integrate in with the DevOps process. And if we try to make them change their process, they're going to go around you. So why not find something that works in the process? That I think helps a lot. The last sort of part about it, and this of course is the hardest part, is the actually doing part, right? You need to start changing your go live process to, at the very beginning, we did the security by design stuff, and I'm going to monitor the milestones along the way. At what point do I see what's happening versus breaking the build? At what points do I have to, make sure that it's really in place versus just sort of there as a framework? It's really a fun process to mature, because you start to move, the fourth bullet here, you start to move from a trusting it's there and checking at the end to this sort of real-time verification. It is actually pretty fun to be able to prove in real time that your controls are there, because they're just in your sim or on your dashboard. The logs are still reporting. They have positive assertions that the control is still in place without monitoring for negative failures or fail open rules or whatever you monitor on your IDS or firewall or scanner. It's really cool when you get to that point. The sort of foundation, and I say this a lot, is it is really important that you take this foundation that you agreed to with the developers, you got them to sign off on it, and then that's what you measure against the end with your sort of specialized experts, with your foundation, with your operational tooling. I think at some point here, the goal is to show continuous progress. I know PayPal is still working on their thing. It's 8 years into it now. So it is continually maturing. So this is a lifestyle choice. This is not a project. Like CMDB is not a project. It's a process to forever manage your stuff. Devops is a process that will continually manage your operations, continually manage your code, continually improve, and it will get better over time, and you have to show progress. It is not okay to spend a year thinking about this without doing anything. At least build little milestones of, okay, we had this quarter, next quarter we're turning on logging, the next quarter we're picking a tool, the next quarter we're putting things in the repository. Make this sort of continual progress, because it shows people you care about it and that you're making the progress, so they give you more money or more time or more people or more whatever you need to continue to go forward. When you get it right, to me, this is what it looks like when I feel people have gotten it right. You're deploying in Amazon, you're doing infrastructure as code. You have people who are deploying using your standard definitions. Maybe they're using your standard templates. Maybe they're deploying with your standard user management things. Maybe they're using your KMS. They have stopped causing the same common problems. It feels really good when people get that right. People deploy using your hardened security images. If you're still deploying images, they should be deploying using your baseline. If they're using, common hardening templates, the secure ones, the well-architected ones, there's no reason they have to create their own anymore. There's some that you can give them. Let the developers be developers. You start to get operational notifications when a control fails. You don't all of a sudden have, hey, where did that log go, right? We don't know what happened because the log went away. When you have continuous assertions, you start to be able to create processes around fixing it. What's interesting about these couple of bullets here, getting the people involved at the right time and operations, there's a big argument I have with people around segmentation of duties, often when it comes to DevOps, because they say to me, I would never want a developer in production to do operations. And if you think about it, that's bias against your developer. It's really another human being at your organization whose job it is to support this thing they were asked to create. It's not about whether they're a developer or not a developer. It's about that they have a responsibility to keep this tool maintained, or application or product or binary, whatever it is. It starts to turn into a real-time authorization scheme of a human who has different roles or contexts of their job. One part of their job might be writing code. Another part of their job might be QAing the code in a different environment. And a third facet of their job might be logging into production to help you fix the thing that they put in there. That same human could have 3 different contexts. Just like you as a human, sometimes you're a dad and sometimes you're a worker, sometimes they're a developer and sometimes they're operational support. Of course, you don't want to give them access to all the things that all the time always turned on, but there's no reason you can't turn roles on and off with the right context. The part about proving the sort of real-time current state and those things. It's a continuous sort of effort here. One question that just came in is, how do companies get past trying to implement parts of this and failing? So the failing word is interesting, right? Generally, what I've seen with companies about this getting it right part is they try to do too much at once. Let's build a huge pipeline of activity. Let's force all of our products through the pipeline. Let's get a couple of tools to rule them all. And when we're done, we will have a DevOps process. And a year later, if it's not there, people are like, oh, we failed. To me, and maybe I'm just being overly easy with this because I've had some successes in the past and not a lot of failures in this, is if it is built in small bite-sized chunks where you work with the emotions of the people, the sort of common minor improvements as you get better over time, as long as you acknowledge this is a journey and you slowly migrate things once you get people on board that you're doing this, it's not a failure. Sure, it might take longer than you estimated. And unfortunately, if you have maybe a breach because of a mess up, that can short circuit things. But I think if you build the baselines in the right way, you can get past a failure back to, hey, what were we trying to accomplish? We weren't trying to shoehorn people into the same system. We were trying to figure out what we have, right? It's a language thing. So most of the time people think they fail when they either spend too much money and nothing happened, or a bunch of people get mad about it. That's generally what I think failures are. We often have big failures where companies hired company X and company X couldn't deliver the tooling they wanted. And after 2 years, there's a failed project, right? That's what a lot of these look like. And if you rip that apart, it was the tool that didn't live up to a promise, not a SecDevOps process delivering what the process desired. And I think that's a really important thing and this is why the how comes in sometimes. It's weird, and I'm sorry if anybody's from IBM, but like if you just hire IBM to do it, maybe you just have to accept that it'll just do 60%, because not every tool does 100% of everything. Maybe it's better to do 60% right and do the manual 40 than do 100% manual. Maybe integrating 10 different tools will get you to 80%. Is that worth the extra people? Is that worth the integration? Maybe it is for you. Having to kick IBM out because they only got to 60%, is that a failed project? Maybe it was failed expectations. I could ramble on and on about the word fail here, and so I'll stop right now and just say, as long as the expectations were set at the beginning that this is going to be a journey, that we might have to change out the tools in order to get the benefits, I think people can get on board that this is generally for the better, that things are more automated and more secure and more standardized. Very few people argue against standardization. And as long as you set this at the beginning, you start to get away with it. And you can maybe even move past a failed implementation because you can acknowledge with this tool, or maybe you can acknowledge that it was a certain personality type, but then you can start again with common definitions and common language. I want to make a comment, and this is not really a COVID comment, but how do we pull off a DevOps process when nobody works together anymore? You can't look somebody in the eye and build that relationship as well as you used to be when everybody was forced to come into the office. What we used to have is GitHub repositories that were installed on premise, and you had to be in the office to check out the code. Today, those laptops are at home, you do it over VPN. You used to have, you can only deploy from the cloud from your desk. Okay, you're not at your desk anymore. When you start to think about, are you at home? Are developers remote? Are they at a third party? Do they work for the cloud provider? It almost never changes the methodology. It does sometimes change how you need to focus the access controls, how you need to think about zero trust, how you need to think about if you really care about your code leakage. What's really funny about debating people about how important their code is they'll say something like, oh, if our code got out, it would be the end of our company. And I think about it, and pick a company like Uber, Lyft, even PayPal. Like, if how the front end worked got out, like maybe some attackers could learn how to attack it better, but would it really be the end of the company? Like, maybe if the encryption key got out, that would be bad. Yeah. Maybe if the secrets got out, that would be bad. But if it's non-proprietary, like Java is Java is Java. We've all stolen all the same code from Reddit or wherever we got the code, right? We've all used the same APIs to call Salesforce. We all use the same templates to call Amazon. Most of that is what's in the code now. And the proprietary stuff, absolutely protect that as though, your company depends on it. But I would say that's 5%. And the 95% is the stuff that people can iterate on through the DevOps process. And the people who are working from home to get things out can use these tools in a remote zero trust manner. You can give them access to the cloud through VPNs. You can give them access to things through multifunction access. You start to increase the security controls on top of this work from home, because the VPN just doesn't cut it. It's not enough, right? You still need MFA, 2FA. You still need multi-party approvals. You still need workflow authorization. You still need root accounts protected on your AWS. You still need multi-cloud. Like, all of these things are just more important now that the people aren't protected with the walled garden of an office store. You used to protect people with man traps, like actually go to the office, but now you have to protect them with the equivalent controls in an enterprise security environment to allow them to work remotely. So I think this is probably the last, thing I'll say, and I'd love to take any more final questions here before I end for the day. I think it's important to acknowledge that in almost every circumstance, the world has moved away from the single go live checklist. You cannot run a functioning organization in today's world without testing as you go, without scanning pieces as you go. Systems are far too complex. Multi-cloud environments are far too complex to wait till the very end to check to see that it's right. You would never build a skyscraper and wait to the very end to check the plumbing. You obviously check the plumbing when the plumbing is ready. So why wait to the end for your application, your data center, your multi-cloud thing? Why would you check it at the end? Why wouldn't you check it as you build the component? So that's a rant. Please don't consider that I want to kill your go live process, but your go live process should be a verification that the 50 things you did before that happened as you expected because you were playing along. Cloud, I'm a big supporter of cloud. I have never met a company that has more security people than Amazon. I have often said something like, I bet my job that Amazon is better at security than me. They're probably better than you. They might not be a better hacker than you, but they have 10,000 people working on the security of their stuff. You coming in with a grand idea of how their thing is going to fail is very likely. It's very likely you don't understand what they do. It's very likely a misinterpretation. It very likely could be a human process failure. I know, like in the shared responsibilities model, knowing that hypervisor is secure, you know what? There's 10 million people who use it. It's probably pretty good. Using these modules to do 99% of the common things the rest of the world does, I would say it's pretty safe. There's probably no pen tester I can hire that hasn't already been hired to go test Amazon in some other way. They've been tested. All these clouds have been tested now by every major tester for every major company. They probably do a good job, right? It's probably mostly safe to use the modules. It might not be safe to put the information there that you want to put there. That's a data problem. That is not a cloud problem. It might not be legal with your regulation in your country to put stuff there. That's not a cloud problem. That's a regulation problem. And I think that DevOps and cloud go together very well. Programming this infrastructure to get the most out of a cloud is really, it's going to be the future. We might move back into the data center for highly confidential things, for cost saving reasons. Global scale requires cloud, sort of full stop. Security, we know we've lost. We lose to the bad guys every day. Most companies have had a data breach of some sort. It is no longer sensational. It's funny because there used to be a saying pre-2015, I guess, that if you get hacked, your stock goes down and your company might go out of business. What we've seen now, post eBay, Home Depot, Target, Equifax, Experian, LinkedIn, Yahoo. Okay, that's what, a billion records leaked. Some of it super critical information, some of it payment data. Most of those companies are still fine. Sony even recovered. And it teaches us that your company isn't going to be destroyed by it. But it also means that everybody's paying attention to it. It's no longer an afterthought where you clean up the pieces. But people know you have to put it at the very beginning. CEOs want to know what the problem is so they can invest in this. CFOs want to understand what percentage of IT has to go back into improving security, because it is expected by shareholders. If you look at the 10Qs, the 10Ks, it says our DR strategy is good or bad. If our security is compromised, we could leak data. They know they need to put some money to fix those things. It's no longer an afterthought. When you talk about, and common sense language is something that I try to pride myself in. If you're a security person who can't describe what you want a control to do, and I don't mean technically do, I mean in control language, you should learn that skill. You really need to describe how you need it to end up, not necessarily you really need to use the firewall to block the ports. Should turn into, guys, I think we need a network control here, because we don't want anybody accessing this that shouldn't. Help me find the right control point for this. Is it a WAF? Is it a host-based rule? Is it a firewall? As a security person, you don't necessarily need to care, as long as the control that you all agree to delivers the control point effectively. And I learned this a number of years ago, that I needed to stop caring what that control point was, with few exceptions, and focus more about how good it was at doing it. I didn't get any benefit of it being McAfee versus Trend versus Symantec. I didn't get any benefit of it being HSM versus Gemalto versus SafeNet. I didn't get any benefit of it being Amazon or Google or Microsoft. I just needed it to deliver it. And so if you start to be able to describe the control and what you needed to do, describe it in language of the developers, describe the concept that you need executed, I think your process can start to move to where you can do this. And this learn about section that I have in here, a pipeline is just scripts. Infrastructure as code is just infrastructure scripts. Docker is a better way to do servers and communication. Zero Trust is just real-time access management. Templates are just like code constructs or reusable pieces. If you're a CS person, you learn about functions. Template is kind of an infrastructure function. It's so simple if you can break it down and stop getting stuck at the how, and you start thinking about the what. Dynamic and static testing is a really important one. Back in the days of Fortify, you would just run a Fortify scan and know it was good. But today now, you want to test the code. Does it work? Great, it works. Is it work using the libraries? Yep. Can I break the input? You fuzz it. Okay, we're still good. Does it work when I install it? Yep. Cool, now let me test it as a whole unit. Okay, now let me put it somewhere else and do the test. As you start to do these different kinds of tests, as the quality matures, really what you're saying is, hey, I need to make sure that there are still no vulnerabilities. I need to make sure that the common attack vectors are still closed. I need to make sure that the things I know about didn't show up somewhere along the way accidentally. That's what this static and dynamic testing is. test it against stuff I know is there versus stuff that I know could happen versus the stuff that I know has happened in the past, and other sort of patterns of things that likely are happen in the future. If you start to understand these sort of concepts, you can start to apply them to any situation. Sort of back to this whole, when does it make sense? Every company, whether they use cloud or not, should have repeatable standards. They should have repeatable methodologies, acronyms, words, repositories. I don't care. But if you're still running a company where there's 200 teams that every one of the 200 teams do their own thing, you will have problems. You will have code bloat. You will have security issues. People won't talk to each other. And even going back to the very beginning, to get those people talk is the start of the journey to DevOps. Getting people to share a password repository is the start of SecDevOps. So whatever part of your journey you're in, I hope you take a minute to think about, as relates to the Cloud Security Alliance, as you're moving into the cloud, use the resources that are out there. Every cloud provider, every vendor, even CSA has guidance of best practices. There's nothing wrong with starting with best practices, right? Think about what the culture is of your company. Learn to talk to the folks around you. Learn to see what their feelings are versus what the technology choices are. And then slowly go on this journey over time. Know that it will take years. Know that it is not just a project. And so I think that's probably about all I want to say today. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take any questions now. I'm happy to answer any questions by LinkedIn or my email. I'm happy to bring somebody in from Kudelski at some point if you guys want to do an official project. It doesn't really matter to me. I'm here to help. So I care passionately about this stuff, and I'm happy to either chat over a virtual glass of wine or now or whenever. So thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, Scott, earlier in your presentation, you talked about maturity and you talked about DevOps, and I've seen companies that have implemented DevOps, but they struggle when they try to focus on maturity. Any tips or advice on where do you start with maturity?
Like measuring maturity? Do you want to talk about measuring or
Sure.
just getting more mature?
Probably getting more mature. Where do they start? What is it really, the kind of the process, focusing on the consistent and repeatable process?
Yeah, so I think there's a definition maturity. How much of what I know about here do I have a definition for? Okay, we've defined the common best practices for password management, coding, storage. Like, okay, we defined it. Cool. What percentage of projects that I know about have implemented these as a percentage, right? That's a maturity thing.
Yep.
What percentage have gone into production with them like this? And I think rather than saying we're 10% done, that doesn't mean anything, right? Because it really skins over. You start to say, this quarter we agreed that there are 10 standards that we think will turn into non-negotiable. We have agreement from 8 of the 10 business units that over the next 6 months they'll implement it. And this quarter we have 1 of the 10 that started the journey, and they're 10% through their code base. And if you start to just sort of do this very casual, look, they're scanning once a week and it's hard. Nobody has started yet because they're waiting, right? And if you start to sort of organize this around conversational maturity, because I think you can show you have maturity thinking about it rather than using a wall of shame or a wall of fame. The goal isn't, I mean, it is to get to 100%, but it's more about, oh, they realized it's better. So now there's 2 people doing it. Cool. Now we have 2 champions and they're both 10% on the way. In 6 months, we're going to check it again. So I think that's how I would think about maturity.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard.
Scott, as you mentioned that this is a journey and not a project. I'm assuming that everyone on the phone here, every practitioner is probably at a different phase of this journey as the person sitting next to them. if you took, 3 things away from today, how to get started? You mentioned a couple things quickly here at the end, but just top resources, or hey, if you have not started this, here might be 3 things to bite off first. What would you prioritize?
Yeah, so let's see. You know what? I almost thought about putting that in. So if we look at this sort of phases of programs, so thing number 1 is to take a minute and see if everybody knows what the rules are. Like, do you have general agreement what this means to people? Is there a repository of standards? Are there known standard artifacts? Is there an architecture team? Like, I think part of the journey is either defining that, knowing where to find it, or continually measuring that people are doing that, depending on which part of the definition you're at. If you're like on the way and now just sort of working through some of the tough points, my tool isn't working quite right. Some of this sort of part about, maybe your definitions are wrong, but a lot of the last little part about delivering is if you have tools in place that you're stuck with, sometimes it's the tool. Most of the time, it's not the tool. Like if you look at the Gartner matrix, and this is a really generic statement, but the things in the upper right quadrant theoretically do what they say they're supposed to do. They worked somewhere. Maybe they don't work for you. So maybe that's a process problem, not a tool problem. And getting tools to work is hard. A lot of companies get stuck when it gets hard. Like when you really need to make a change to use a tool, it's hard and it sucks. And if you're at the part of the journey where you need to make the tool work for you, it really takes some intestinal fortitude to just get over the hump of, okay, we got to get the tool from 60% right to 80%. Somebody's going to have to spend a couple of weeks cleaning up the noise. You don't throw away the tool because there's noise. You work through the noise and you clean it up. And so getting stuck at that tool is maybe about, let's just take a quick survey to make sure nobody is having these same problems. Then let's decide how well we need these tools to work. If we're okay with that level of maturity, then we're on the right path. If everybody agrees that we can't overcome this, then you take a reset. So then there's that part of it. If you're further on in your journey and everybody thinks it's working great, then I think you get to the, how do I show how well this is working? How do I discover other places that I can bring into it? Like this is a continuous maturity loop. And this sort of, find more experts, look at the CSA guidance. Best practices change every 6 months, at a maximum. Amazon releases new blueprints all the time. You do have to keep up. Maybe bring in a third party to just do a quick check of your program. Maybe once a year you do a check-in. But I think that sort of operational retest maybe to see that it is still working. See that people haven't turned off things that they shouldn't have turned on. Things, make sure people aren't going around the edges. So at the beginning, make sure that your standards are still there. If you're sort of mired in tool glut, look sort of hard at that and see if you're still comfortable there. And if you're more operational, make sure you're doing that continuous improvement, bringing more people in, doing that reporting to keep going with the process.
Thank you. Probably have time for 1 or 2 more questions here quick. If anyone in the chat has questions, or otherwise go ahead and unmute yourself too if you do have a question.
I do, Sarah, I do get a question occasionally off the side. Which tool is the best tool to buy? And the answer is almost always that it doesn't matter. It's really, there's 20 or 50 or 100 tools that do a lot of these things. A lot of the free ones are really good. A lot of the vendor ones are really good. Your products, your clouds, your internal systems help drive those decisions. You do have to acknowledge that you'll never get to 100% perfect. So it's best to pick known patterns. There are very good known patterns around these things. There are good known reference architectures, and picking the right reference architecture with the right people is the right place to start. Because I can't say, every phone is good as long as it's an iPhone. That's not how it works in the tooling area. So doing appropriate thing. Sometimes best of breed is best. Sometimes best of cloud is best. And sometimes best of vendor is best, depending on who you are and how well you're integrated you are. Anybody else out there?
Not seeing anybody here. We'll stick around for a couple minutes. If anyone does have questions, feel free to stick around. Otherwise, on behalf of CSAMN, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you to Fernando for sponsoring today, and thank you to Scott for being our keynote and sharing us all this valuable information here today. So we'll give you guys back your afternoon, and thank you all for joining. We look forward to seeing you at our September event.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. Have a good one. Bye-bye.